Hi, everybody. My name's Bob. I'm going to be your host tonight. I've got my teammates with me. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. It's something that's very important to us because it's something that we have all struggled with. On the team here, we've all had our bouts of not feeling our best mentally and emotionally. And tonight we're going to share a bunch of information with you regarding stress. I'm going to introduce my co-host real quick. Sean O'Grady is our in-house mental health clinician. Sean and I have been working together here at I Got Mine for almost 5 years now. Hey, Sean, that's hard to believe.
Yeah, you bet. Time flies when you're having fun. Hi, everybody. And yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe some of you were on one of the sessions we did a few months back that I did with the Do More Ag group, which was lots of fun. And here to talk about some of the aspects of mental health, but certainly grew up working on farms in rural Eastern Ontario as well. And my dad made sure that I had lots of hay mows and things to build my character despite having serious hay fever and other allergies. So I spent my teenage years hopped up on Claritin and other medications to try to manage, and then at least got to the loading phase of hay season, so I wasn't stuck up in the mow dying with sneezes and itchy eyes. But happy to be here and connect and have some conversations tonight.
Yeah. I think that was the most important part in the relationship that we've been, forming with Do More Ag is we've all got some sort of history, background, relationship with the community. I'll tell a little bit of my story kind of as we go along, but Sherry Gabbard has been a part of the team for almost 3 years now. Again, time flies when you're having fun. Sherry is from Saskatchewan. How we met was she is a former teacher now, but at the time she was teaching and asked if I would come in and work with some of the students and staff. Unfortunately, it never happened because of COVID. We kept the conversation going, and she's been a part of the team ever since. Sherry is a Saskatchewan girl, still is a Saskatchewan girl. She's actually on the farm tonight. And Sherry, just talk a little bit about your background and, understanding the community here.
Yeah, I was born in Etonia in a small town. And I'm on the farm right now. We just started seeding tonight, and we're feeding the guys. Had to hustle back because they just got into the field. And so yeah, I was married to a farmer for about 7 years. And so I had firsthand kind of the stressors that happened on the farm, and that was back in the 90s. So it was a little bit different back then. But yeah, I still live in a small town. I taught in small towns for probably 3/4 of my career. And so, yeah, I've grown up in this area. And, Sean, when I was like 13, I worked on a farm as well and threw bales, and I'd come home and my eyeballs were like, you couldn't even see them. They were just like swollen shut. So I get that whole hay fever thing, but I went back the next day, Saskatchewan girls, that's what we do. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Yeah. And I taught for 30 years as well. So
Thanks, Sherry. Really appreciate that. She's got lots of experience in understanding what we're going to be talking about tonight. Understanding stress is vitally important. And when I think about my own life's experience and where I ended up, struggling with anxiety and depression and using drugs and alcohol to kind of numb that pain and not understanding how to deal with the stress. And my background is I was a former professional hockey player. So my growing up years were in Swift Current. I was there from 86 to 89. I was part of when Swift first came back into the Western League and was part of the bus accident. I was part of, some very unfortunate things that were going on there. Was also a part of winning the Memorial Cup. And really, when I think about the trauma that we suffered when, you know, when we had the bus accident, we lost our teammates, and what I learned about community, because being a Calgary guy, just didn't see that, didn't grow up with that. And, you know, being a young teenager in Swift Current, really got to experience community. And a lot of them were, you know, from the farming community, the small town, you know, all the business owners, everybody knew everybody. And it really did save me, that connection in that community. And Sean, when we talk about, you know, the stress that we have, and sometimes we can struggle because we isolate and we don't want to talk about things, really important to stress that the more that we stay connected to people, the more we have the ability to probably decompress some of that stress, to relieve some of that stress. But oftentimes we go the other way, where we tend to hold on to too much of that stress.
Yeah, I think it certainly can create lots of confusion. And in fact, what we know about our brains is that when we're in a level of stress that starts to become problematic or unhealthy, so to speak, our amygdala actually sends some signals that there's some real danger going on. And then what our brains tend to do is pull us into these places of isolation, withdrawal, because it almost starts to want to shut down and become really protective. And so I think people might judge themselves for that, but I think it really is about having kindness and compassion for yourself, and knowing that when we do get ourselves pulled into those isolating states or become overwhelmed or numb because the stress gets somewhat, you know, toxic, so to speak, it actually is, you know, it starts to trick our amygdala into telling us we are in legitimate and fearful danger, and starts to shut us down, which you're right, is essentially the worst thing possible. Is because what we know is, you know, when people are dealing with trauma or adversity or higher levels of stress, it's really not about what or how much of it that's going to determine whether we get through it or not. It's more, how many healthy people do you surround yourself with? And that tends to be the thing that will determine how we get through adverse experiences or adverse situations. But it's a bit counterintuitive, because when we're overwhelmed or overstressed, we're fighting the urge to isolate instead of reach out and connect with people, which is the thing that's probably going to help us the most.
Yeah. As we go along tonight, we're going to ask you to participate with us. So we use something called Slido. This is a live polling software. It's completely 100% anonymous. And as we ask you questions, we're going to reveal the answers on the screen, because it's really important when we're talking about these issues that you see that we're not the only one. And I know for me, you know, being in those places for a long chunk of my life, I always felt like I was the only one. And Sherry, you know, dealing with your illnesses and getting to the health, I'm sure you experienced that same type of thing, right? Where you felt like you were the only one that was dealing with these sort of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Bob did, I moved to Swift Current as well at a very young age. And so I was away from home for grade 11, grade 12. And, you know, I had absolutely no skills when I was younger, and I had a bit of a traumatic upbringing. And so I wasn't able to cope. And it just continued to get worse right into the university years. And then in my teaching years, I really struggled. I was later diagnosed with a mental illness, bipolar 2. And you know, I wondered my whole life why I felt so isolated and why I wasn't like the rest of the people around me. You know, I just didn't understand why I was so depressed or why I was so hyper. And it finally at 45, you know, I was like, thank God, I know what's going on. Now I need to learn some skills and learn how to regulate and figure this out. You know, so it took till about 49 till I really got it together. And, you know, I'm 58 now. And so it took me a long time. But now, you know, working on this every single day, it's gold. It's really gold, you know. And the slides that are coming up, right? It's gonna show you what you need to do and how we can help.
Everybody that we worked with that goes through this, does have an aha moment in one way or another. If it's not for themselves, it could be to assist and help somebody else, to start a conversation, to know how to respond to a conversation, right? There's a lot of information that we're going to give you. So get comfy, join the Slido. That'll come up again. I'll show you. But if you scan that code with your phone, if you're on your computer, or if you just go to slido.com, and if it asks you for the code, just type in "do more ag." That's going to get you into the system. And we really appreciate you doing that because it helps us with the conversation. This is something that we love to do because it is one of the biggest things with stress. It's something to help regulate yourself. And Sean, just talk a little bit about this 2-minute exercise and regulation and why that's so important in managing stress.
Yeah, it's certainly the thing that's probably the most universal experience that we have as humans is the need to breathe. It's the thing that keeps us functioning essentially in every way, shape, and form. But that, you know, more and more we're paying attention to what sort of helpful and mindful breathing is comparative to sometimes the shallow or kind of erratic breathing that we can engage in when we don't notice and we don't pay attention. There's been some really great research done over the last 10 to so years, particularly with combat soldiers that were facing kind of deployment in Afghanistan and Iraq, and that you know, some of the work that they did was engaging in this kind of mindful breathing, you know, 12 minutes a day, and their reduction in mental health or mental illness related disorders, the ability to what they lots of their family members would say, my spouse or partner shipped out long before they left, meaning that they would get into these anticipatory stressful experiences. I would say not uncommon to, you know, a farming cycle where we have lots of anticipatory stress related to what Sherry was just saying. Are we going to get the seeding in? Is there going to be enough, you know, is there going to be enough rainfall? Is it too windy to blow all the seeds away? Those sorts, so that we live in these places of anticipatory stress. And it's not realistic to completely avoid that. But to counteract that, if we take a bit of time each and every day to engage in meaningful meditated breathing, it is one of the single most powerful things that does keep mental health in a place of wellness and prevents it from becoming perhaps more mental illness or even just sort of problematic or toxic stress.
And you know, sometimes people misinterpret what we do, you know, that we're going to be able to eliminate stress. No, we're going to teach how to manage it. Because you don't eliminate. Life is stressful from the time you come into this world. You know, talking with a doctor one time, and it was interesting, you know, why does a baby cry right away, right? Well, think about the stress of just coming into this world. Everything's taken care of. You're sitting nice and calm, and you're fed and you're warm, and right, all this different stuff. And all of a sudden, out you come to bright lights and cold. And so from day one, you know, we experience stress as human beings, and it is something that can be managed, and it's something that you can overcome. It doesn't eliminate the stress. It just gives you the skills to be able to manage the stress in a different way, like we're going to talk about today. Great video. Sit back, relax. It's 2 minutes, and let's see how you feel.
But becoming more aware of your own thoughts and feelings and what's around you, and accepting the present moment, can help improve your mental health and well-being. Doing this affects both the mental and the physical you. Some people call this being more mindful. Focusing on the present means paying attention to your thoughts and feelings right here, right now. Breathing exercises are a great way to focus on the present and be more mindful. Doing this can also help when you're feeling stressed or anxious. This short video will take you through how to do a mindful breathing exercise. Firstly, settle into a natural, comfortable position. When you're ready, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Breathe naturally, noticing the sensations of the breath entering and leaving the body as best you can. Allow your shoulders and neck to relax, focusing on your breathing, just being aware of it. Focus on how your body feels. What sensations do you notice? Do you feel your feet on the floor or the feeling of your clothes on your skin? Take this time to pay close attention to physical sensations, from the top of your head right down to your toes. Notice what you're thinking about right now and how you're feeling. Just take the time to notice your thoughts and feelings without judgment and without trying to change them. When you're ready, take one more breath and try to bring this awareness with you into the next moments of your day. Breathing techniques like this one can help to center you in the moment at any time and connect you with the present, which can help if you're feeling stressed or anxious.
So a great exercise that is very simple, and I'd be really curious in the chat, how do you feel now? If you don't mind, go ahead and put that in there for us. We would love to see it. You know, I'm going to come to Sean on this one first, because I think it's really important. In that, it's important to know how you're feeling, right? How are the clothes on your skin? How is your body? And being able to manage stress and eliminate and start to develop skill sets to overcome the stress that you feel. It's really important that we know what we're feeling and why. My stress manifests in my back. You know, when my back gets really tight, really sore, it's typically because I'm holding on to too many things. And Sean, a great way to start to learn about the stress and how it really affects you physically, we know what it does mentally, but physically, is to pay attention to your body.
Yeah, the body speaks is really an important term to identify, right? Is when we've got, you know, hypertension, neck pain, headaches, nausea, sweating, aches, you know, those sorts of, it's often our body trying to send warning signals of maybe the emotional and or mental struggle that may be going through at any given time. When I'm working with people in a mental health capacity, I often like to use the analogy when we think about the things that contribute to our stress or the anxiety that goes along with feeling overwhelmed. Is it's sort of this idea of the rocking chair. So the rocking chair is to start to pay attention to, am I thinking backwards to things I have no control over from the past and ruminating on those sorts of things, and maybe the guilt and shame and stress and worry and fear that can create? Or am I rocking forward, anticipating the things that I'm worried about in the future, which typically our brain always tells us are worse than they are. And even if not, there's certainly nothing that I can do about it in this present moment anyways, right? And so I think you know, what these exercises do is that body scanning you're talking about is getting us more present and centered. And the important thing about mindfulness is I think sometimes people believe it to be some sort of yogi in the Himalayas with flowing robes. Maybe some of us can get to that level of enlightenment. I certainly haven't, and don't anticipate being able to. One of the things that's most helpful about mindfulness for me is to pay attention to how quick monkey brain kicks in, right? And so even doing that exercise at the beginning, to just start to notice how many seconds does it take before I get into thinking, you know, and is that thinking helpful thinking or unhelpful thinking? And so if nothing else, getting into present moment just helps us start to notice how quickly we might get into unhelpful thinking patterns, and then not to get angry or upset, but just the ability to notice is to bring it into our present moment and start to take a bit more active control around, now, how much do I want to pay attention to maybe these things, particularly if they're quite unhelpful?
The phrase is, I'm going to lose my mind. You know, those are key indicators that there's too much stress going on. And Sherry, you know, in being able to manage yourself now, there's two things that I really want you to touch on. One is making yourself important. Two, being able to be aware of what you need and when you need it. Can you speak to those things for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, when I started healing and I started feeling a little bit better, the only way I could do that is put myself first and create boundaries around me in order to stay in my window of tolerance and stay regulated. I put myself first, and I don't feel like it's being selfish. I feel like it's selfless, actually, and it's the opposite. Because I'm able to now allow people in. I've got space within me. When I'm regulated, I let people love me. I can love people better. I can communicate so much better. I can actually, talk to people. My body language, my facial expressions, everything is so much better when, I put myself first. And I create boundaries and I say, no, I'm not able to do that. Maybe we can circle back to that later. But right now it doesn't, it's not going to serve me. So, and that awareness piece is so crucial. Like when Sean was talking, or you were talking about your back, I hold it in my chest. So it's right in there. And, that alarm center in my brain, as soon as I feel that, I know what I have to do. I have to breathe. I have to take that second. My last 5 years of teaching, before class started, I would close the door and I would do 3 minutes of where is it on my body that I'm feeling it? And if it's here, I know that I have to take a few minutes, even when the bell rings, and then open the door to let them in. So that awareness has really saved me. Yeah. It saved my life because I'm able to now regulate and stay in that nice window of tolerance, even in really stressful times.
Okay, so we want to give you a demonstration. This is a great video. It's two people. It's funny. It's making light of the situation. There's one individual that is going to communicate, right? They're stressed. They're feeling it. But the other person doesn't, validate, doesn't support, they add on. And I know, the family dynamic is tough enough. When you've got the pressure of trying to do all the things that you do in the community that you're a part of, right? We all get stressed. And this is what happens in a funny kind of way when we don't take a minute to breathe, when we don't, understand that we've got to do some regulation. What it does is it just creates more and more chaos. So enjoy this clip.
All right, Happy, nice and easy. That was not nice and easy.
That guy's driving me crazy.
You know what's driving me crazy? You not getting the ball in the hole.
Don't push me, Bob. Now's not the time.
He and Bob Barker are now dead last.
I can't believe you're a professional golfer. I think you should be working at the snack bar.
You better relax, Bob.
There is no way that you could have been as bad at hockey as you are at golf.
All right, let's go. Oh! You like that, old man? You want a piece of me?
I don't want a piece of you. I want the whole thing. Oh!
And how many times, when you think about the dynamic that you're a part of, how many times does it end up in an unnecessary fight? And Sean, this is a big part. This was a huge learning for me because I would always blame my stress on everybody else. But what I've come to realize and learn, and one of the things we really like to get across, is that it's not because of them, it's because of me.
Yeah, I think there's this sort of idea that the only thing we have control over is ourselves, right? But so much in family dynamics or work environment is we try to control other people, right? And we allow other people to control us. And what usually happens is we all become out of control really quickly. And you can see as the build up to that video is Bob Barker trying to, serve up some shame for Happy there, right? And so the fact that he's not getting his needs met, you know, in a competitive situation is I'm now going to shame you and criticize you and judge you as a way to sort of act out and try to control, you know, like control you with expressing my dissatisfaction, which usually, instead of creating what we would hope for a co-regulating situation, is to see a family member or a coworker that's temporarily losing control and to think about, okay, how do I use my brain to help them calm down? What we often see is, you know, we use our brains to help each other go right up, you know, through the roof, right? And it's when we tend to lose control of our own emotions that it creates this what we call a co-dysregulating situation, right? And which then can activate a fight response, right? Which was you know, the two of them starting to now justify how aggression or violence is the way that they're going to solve this problem. It's, you know, it's a funny video, but sadly, in my experience as a mental health professional, you know, domestic violence and or other kind of, you know, toxic workplace cultures can really manifest in that very way. I think comedy movies can actually do a nice job of highlighting how dangerous and destructive it can be when this actually plays out for us in real life.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, you know, anybody that's married, been married, and Sherry, you talked about you were married, you know, that stress can really destroy and unravel the relationship. You know, we come together in marriage because there's a connection, because we feel, but then we start to have a busy life, and now we've got a farm, and now we've got all these responsibilities, and now we've got kids, and now we've got sports for the kids, and now we've got more bills to pay, and we've got more pressure and more stress, and because we've never developed those skills together, every little thing that we do can piss the other one off, and then it starts. The important part of this is that our stress becomes our kids' behavior rather quickly. And it's important to understand, you know, it's like, oh, it's not such a big deal. No, when that's what they're seeing over time, they're going to start to develop the same behaviors and the same reactions as you. I'm sure you have mini me's running around your house. And Sherry, growing up in that kind of environment, you know, what did that teach you as a kid and how to deal with things when they weren't going your way?
Yeah, I mean, that's how my mom and dad operated, you know. That's how they dealt with stress, is they would hit each other and they would drink large amounts of booze at you know, at given times. You know, they would binge drink. So that's how I learned how to you know, deal with my stress. And if I was angry, you know, I played basketball at the University of Regina. Like, if I was angry, I would kick the basketball at the referee, or I would swear, or I would, you know, handle myself in that way. And then, you know, I got married and I had absolutely no communication skills because I couldn't regulate. I couldn't do this stuff. And yeah, and then we had 2 kids, and we, you know, the farm was growing. We had a high clearance spraying business, and things were tense, and, you know, it just didn't work out because, you know, I couldn't regulate, he couldn't regulate, we couldn't communicate. It just ended up, you know, just awful. And I know, you know, if I look at my sister on this big farm, I mean, we 15,000 acres, you know, they're seeding this year, and she's done a lot of work on herself, and I watch her regulate her 3 sons, and I watch her regulate her husband, and it's amazing what has happened in the last 2 years for her, because she's been working on this stuff. Her husband is able to think straight. Her kids are able to function much better, and their wives as well.
You're muted, Bobby.
Bob, can't hear you. Yeah.
You know, people always say, I don't have time. Well, how much time do you spend angry? How much time do you spend fighting? How much time do you spend sad? How much time do you spend worrying that maybe this is not going to work? So, you know, Sean talked about earlier is, you know, we get into that catastrophic thinking because we're in an unhealthy place. You can only have unhealthy thoughts, which is only going to contribute to more doubt, worry, fear, uncertainty. And it's not until you get to that regulated place that you can realize these are actually not helpful thoughts. They're not going to solve problems. They just create problems. And, you know, that catastrophic thinking is one thing that absolutely contributes to stress. They say the average person has 60,000 thoughts a day. Okay, imagine if 60,000 unhealthy thoughts are bouncing around in your head. What do you think is going to happen? Right? You are going to explode on somebody. You are going to have an episode. You know, I used to work myself into anxiety attacks because of that catastrophic thinking, where all of a sudden now I can't breathe. My heart feels like it's going to jump out of my chest, and I've got to go to the hospital because I think I'm having a heart attack. You know, these are the types of things that happen, and it's just the reality of it. What we're trying to get across is it doesn't have to happen this way. It really doesn't. And these conversations and this type of learning is invaluable. We're going to ask you some questions now. So we're going to go to Slido. If you didn't get it at the beginning, there it is right there on the side for you. There's 4 questions that you're going to be asked, and then we're going to reveal the answers as we go. Just go to slido.com and do more ag. Sean, while they're doing that, I think it's important that we do, you know, I love how you've taught me, if we don't talk it out, we're going to act it out.
Right. I think that we do come to this concept that thoughts and emotions start to counteract with each other and generate a cyclical pattern, right? You know, and awareness is really the key to that. But if we get stuck in a place where I've got some difficult feelings to manage, that creates a certain level of unhelpful thinking, or what I would sometimes refer to as thinking traps. And we can probably all relate to thinking traps out there. We anticipate a conversation is going to go way worse than maybe it does. We think about the worst case scenario of what's going to happen in a particular situation. And that generates behaviors, right? And so what people need when they get to that high risk place is they need some level of safe landing spot, right? And that isn't necessarily someone that's going to solve their problems for them. In fact, that often can escalate it further if you open up to somebody to express yourself, you know, and whether it's your spouse or your child or your in-laws, and they go, oh, well, if you just do this, you'll be fine. That doesn't actually, and so the good news is all we really have to do is kind of listen. I like to think about it sort of like playing a game of tennis where it's serve and return. We're hitting a ball over the net back and forth, just trying to listen and understand. What that does is it really drains off some of the difficult emotions that we might be going through, and it starts to maybe bring down some of those unhelpful thinking traps and just create space. It's like letting air out of a balloon. And if we don't have a place to do that, a safe person, a journal, a notebook, the ability to yell into a pillow, or you know what I mean, scream in your tractor when no one's around and can hear you, whatever you can do. If you don't find a way to talk it out, you act it out. And so what is acted out? Well, it is aggressive behavior. It might be erratic driving, road rage. It might be finding unhelpful substances that start to numb or temporarily seem as though they're solving a problem. It might lead to really acting out, sadly, with the people we feel the safest with. And who is that? Well, often it's our family and our extended family and our coworkers, right? And so if we don't find a safe landing place to express this, generally that becomes actionable. And if we're not really aware and in control, the actionable actions tend to be dangerous and destructive. Yep. And that's why this awareness, I think, can be so important.
4 to 6 times a day, it shows on the screen, 4 to 6 times a day, I feel stressed. Okay, so that's every day at work. That's 5 days, that's 6 days. For you guys out there, that could be 7 days, right? Depending. What do you think that's going to do? You think that there's not going to be some sort of side effect to that, whether it's a broken or damaged relationship, whether it's that you start to get so upset with yourself that you're feeling this way that you start to abuse yourself, right? It takes a heavy toll. And that's why it's so important, because we experience it. Like I said, life is stressful. We're not changing that. If you can help us figure out how to change the world, listen, we're all ears. It's when we start to learn the skills that things really start to change. What is it that tends to cause stress? Yeah, coworkers, demand of family and work, real expectations. Yeah, very good. So again, dealing with other people, right? You stress me out, Sherry. Damn it. When you do, like you're such a pain in the ass. You're always stressed. No. It's me choosing to feel that way. And that's one of the biggest steps, Sherry, that the individuals have to take, is that it's your stress, not my stress. How many times have you been pissed at somebody and they're going, what are you doing? Doesn't affect them at all.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And back to my sister again, you know, she's just this listener, just a sounding board. And yeah. And all those guys, they phone mom and she just listens. And, you know, all of a sudden they come right down into their nice little regulated area, and then away they go. But her damn phone, her damn phone's ringing all the time. And so she's regulating all day long. It's really amazing to watch on this big farm. Because there are a lot of times throughout the day. And, you know, now one of her sons, you know, was diagnosed with, you know, an illness that they're all dealing with, and then seeding starting. So, you know, she's doing just a wonderful job. It's great to watch her. But there's so many times a day where she's helping. Yeah.
You have strategies to manage your stress when it occurs. Good. Okay. We got 80% saying, yeah, we do. And we got 20%, I'm thinking about it. And, you know, it's so important when I think about my ability to manage my stress today versus even 5 years ago. There's so many tools that I've been able to learn and adapt. That breathing exercise is one of them. You know, being able to realize that I need to stop what I'm doing for a little while, and I just need to go get some fresh air, even just sitting outside for a couple of minutes. You know, going for a walk, calling one of my teammates. You know, there's something going on. You got to have more than one tool in the toolbox, because the problem is some days it's just not going to work. And Sean, you know, the more tools we have in the toolbox, the easier it's going to be, because when the first one doesn't work, you better have a second one or you're going there.
Yeah, and I think it's the important thing is to understand that there's probably things that we need to do to get us upregulated if we're maybe a bit sort of more in a depressed or lethargic space, right? And so what are some of the behavioral activations that would go along with that? And maybe that is some of the movement, music, walking, you know, drumming, socializing, you know, engaging, dancing, you know, fitness. Those sorts of things tend to be more of the upregulating things if we really fall into that ability where the only thing I want to do is, you know, stay in bed or stay on the couch for, you know, a period of time that might go beyond what we'd consider, you know, important, you know, downtime. And then the down regulating activities. And so, you know, that mindful breathing, the body scanning, you know, some sort of relaxation, you know, journaling, poetry, artwork, painting, drawing, any of the things that maybe can bring us down a little bit, you know what I mean? And so I think you're so right, is that the challenge or the, you know, I think some of the unhelpful self-help books out there get a little bit sort of one-dimensional or one-trick pony, so to speak, where it's like, just do this and you'll be fine. And I feel really concerned about that, because I think it's a real setup for people that take the courage and have the courage to try a strategy. And then if that strategy doesn't work, it makes them feel maybe a bit worried or terrified that nothing. And I think you're right, like that diversity of knowing that if I've got 6 or 7 things that for a variety of situations I've found helpful for different times and different places, that gives me much more of a hopefulness that it's like, okay, well, I tried this and it didn't work, but maybe this is a moment where I need to get upregulated. And so I'm going to do something that's a little more upregulating because that's helped me in the past, and vice versa, if it's maybe something I need to get. So I think the more tools we can throw in our toolbox, and it really is, you know, just, you know, trial and error, so to speak, because it's going to be different things for different people. But I think there's certainly 10 or 15, you know, generally good thematic strategies that can and do work for people, depending on if they need to go up or go down.
Yeah. You know, I love definitions because they provide the clarity that we need when we talk about understanding, and that's why we call it understanding stress. Knowledge of or familiar with a particular thing, skill in dealing with or handling something. And so if we understand the things that cause us pain, we can become competent in dealing with it. You know, people say all the time, oh, I know that. why aren't you doing it? Because you don't have understanding. You have knowledge, but you don't know how to apply that knowledge. And that's the big difference between a lot of people when we're talking about trying to get, healthy, is that everybody knows, right? You talk to them, oh, I know that. Yeah, I know that. Okay, well, why aren't you doing it? Right? Because they don't know how to go about doing that. And Sherry, we talk a lot about a lot of different things, but getting well is still a lot of part of our conversations. It wasn't until you got that understanding and developed those skills that you could start to live the life that you're fortunate to live today.
Yeah, like I look back and I had no understanding of the brain at all. I just took it for granted that brain's just going to do everything. And, I didn't understand where that anxiety was coming from, where that depression was coming from. And once I started to actually learn about the brain, and my therapist put some things into action, and then I actually did them every day, all day, until I trained my brain to regulate itself pretty much. Like I trained it. I developed all different neural pathways than I had before. And yeah, just understanding it and being aware of it saved my life. It really did, because, I could always go back and go, oh, that's what's happening in there. Okay, I'm aware of that. I know what's going on. And now I can pull out one of my tools, which I have a lot of, right? And I have a lot of them because I've practiced a lot of them every single day. And now they just come naturally. I'm able to it just happens now because I've done it so much. But that understanding of the brain is critical, because as soon as you got that and you start working on some of those things, life gets better.
Right.
It's so much better.
So much better. Important to understand there's two sides of stress. There's healthy stress, there's unhealthy stress. And, I've learned in certain areas of my life that are more stressful to develop the skills. So it's not unhealthy stress anymore, it's healthy stress. Growing up, I didn't know the difference between the two. So, when I was out, trying to become a professional hockey player, you put me in a rink, I'm good. Right? It could be the most stressful environment, and people would always say, I don't know how you guys deal with that. I don't, because I was trained, I was practiced to deal with that. But you put me into regular life, I'm a gong show, right? I couldn't handle any of that stress. And I see that happen a lot, where somebody has developed the ability to manage their stress in a healthy way, to be very productive at work. But the minute they come home and have to deal with the stressful environment of that, they've got no skills, and it completely collapses. And when you look at healthy stress, can make us grow, it can make us confident, and it can get us to that success, whether it's just a feeling or an end goal. But the unhealthy stress, Sean, it creates our pain, it creates the physical issues, and it destroys. And really being able to understand which one we are experiencing. And I'm going to pull up our stress performance curve here. I'd like you to walk the audience through that just a little bit, because the more awareness that we can create, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah, I think awareness is so key here. This idea that you really do anything that you've typically done from a developmental standpoint, right? Whether it's achieving, your high school diploma and or some post-secondary school, whether it's been learning skills to take on a new task within the farming industry, whether it's resolving a conflict with somebody that you maybe didn't perceive you had the skills or abilities to do. That's when you've typically, hit that peak of a healthy stress curve, and that growth, right? Is we've learned something, it's challenged us a little bit, but as a result, we've developed the confidence to do so. So it's stress in and of itself is not to be avoided in any way, right? And to recognize that on the left side of that stress curve is that we can't grow and learn all the time, though, right? And so this idea of I think, as we are actors on this planet Earth, the acting of being a human being, right? The acting of being a family member, of being an employee, of being a coworker, of being a friend. There's a performance that goes along with that. And so with any performance, there are times where we do need to recharge, right? And so Probably certain seasons for the folks out there where healthy sleep patterns, nap, relaxation, and reset is probably somewhat stretched and not reasonable during certain peak times throughout the season, right? Maybe not as many opportunities to regroup and take a breath, prepare for that next experience. And so then if we don't then have what I'd call maybe some of these emergency strategies that we can use when some of the recharge and regroup strategies just literally aren't available due to seeding season and or harvest season, the things that probably really take us out of this rhythm. The thing would be this awareness. Am I getting to that place of overload, right, where I'm exhausted? And if so, that tends to be the time where we may be more likely to act out if we don't have some of those tools to pull out of our toolbox, right? And then if and the burnout is when we really start to become to the point where we no longer can function or perform, right? And we really start to break down. And so having an awareness of this can start to help us set ourselves up for what is a successful rhythm that we need, right? And for the farming community, there's probably a seasonal rhythm, right? Where there's times where we're going to have to expend, but I would say, the history of the human species is consistent with that, right? There's always been a hunting season and there's always a gathering season. And in between times, there's downtime where we need to be in relationship and we need to be in community, right? And we need those opportunities to recharge and regroup. The problem is if we don't find those healthy relational connections, we don't create those opportunities for us to be in safe, healthy relational space because we're acting out, right? We're acting out on the people that we care about and that care about us. And so then sadly, we spend the majority of our time on the right side of this curve, right? And that's where it really can lead to some pretty destructive outcomes for people. And I've read all the textbooks and I practice, but I've absolutely at times in my life been in that overload and burnout, right? And there's a lot of when I think about myself, times where I've even viewed myself as a fraud, right? Where I'm like, here I am going to work as a professional and I'm trying to promote some of these strategies, but I'm a total fraud because I'm not practicing any of them. I'm coming home and losing my cool on my family, or I'm, not finding a good rhythm and work-life balance, and I'm burning myself out. And so, I don't speak about this diagram just as someone that studied it. I speak to it as times where I've really not found the rhythm and the catastrophe and the relational damage that's caused me in my own personal life is all the more reason I speak about this importance. And it's probably awareness about these sorts of things that's maybe pulled me out of what I would like to say, keeping the white wolf on my path a little more than letting that dark wolf that walked a little too close to my feet from time to time throughout my life, for sure.
The overload and burnout, what did it lead to? Drinking, right? That's what I did when I was overloaded and I was burned out. And so now I can't sleep, right? Because I got 60,000 unhelpful thoughts bouncing around. What's my future? What am I going to do? How's this going to work out? And so what do? You're introduced to something that works and it works well, right? And so now instead of doing healthy strategies so that I can actually get a good night's sleep, I developed the habit of drinking too much, smoking weed, right? All those different things that would help me go to sleep. Now, the problem was this cycle, because it showed to me that it was productive and it worked somewhat, that was the path that I thought was actually going to work out for me. Now, the problem was 6 beers didn't work anymore. So now I got to start mixing in hard alcohol because you develop a tolerance, right? The weed doesn't work anymore. Now you need harder stuff. And so it just gets worse and worse and worse, where the burnout and overload, that becomes the way of life. That's every day. Because I'm stressed if somebody finds out that I've got a problem. So it compounds itself, and having the awareness to realize which of these phases you're in and then actually do something about it is going to help you not go to those places, because that's the shortest, easiest route, but it's not the shortest, easiest route. That makes the road longer. It makes the road harder. It takes away a lot of things in life that you very much valued because you're not doing the things that you need to do. That's the importance of this. That's how it happens. That's how it happens to everybody. And this, what we're trying to talk about today, is how you can stop some of those repetitive behaviors, because they're not going to do any good for anybody. It really is about healing. Yeah.
And just to add here, to add to that,
Yeah.
Bob, is the one thing for again, for having that self-compassion is, if humans are nothing else, they're predictable and consistent, right? And so many of us stay in that unhelpful pattern. Why? Well, not because we necessarily want to, but that's what I've always done. And I've got unhelpful thinking that tells me that I don't have time to try anything new. And so I just continue to function in pain. And it's really sad, you know, because I speak from it both, you know, personally, you know, as well as seeing the havoc that it can wreak, you know, as a professional, and seeing, you know, destroyed marriages and you know, substance abuse problems and lots of really high risk behavior. And sadly, not because people wake up in the morning and go, I can't wait to destroy myself. It's more so, it's like, well, this is just the pattern that I've always done, and so I'm just going to continue doing it. And that, it sadly becomes a very powerful and predictive aspect of human behavior. And it's hopeful that, you know, sessions like this and other great information that we now have, that we haven't always had available to us, can maybe shake us out of some of the unhelpful patterns that many of us can get stuck in for years and years and years.
Healing is growing sound, getting well, mending. And so that's what we're talking about. You know, how do we heal from years and years of not knowing what the stress thing was? Understanding what stress is means we can begin to control it, because it's ours, right? That's what we control, us. So we can heal us. We can try and help other people to heal, but you've heard the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And I've really found, and Sherry, I'd be really curious to get your take on this. When you started to heal, what kind of impact did that have on your community, your family, when they saw you taking your wellness seriously?
Yeah, huge impact. You know, my kids could see the growth, and I think they were really proud of me. I had to step out of that dance that Sean was just talking about, you know, that circular dance. And I had to figure out, okay, I'm not going to drink anymore. You know, I'm going to make sure that I limit my alcohol. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start doing all these things that help me. And guided imagery was huge for me. Visualization was absolutely huge. And those are hard things to continue to do. But I was really, I had broken down. I was in that burnout stage for so long, Bob, that my body just said, no, you're done. Yep. So you have to heal or you will die. Like, it's just, that's just how it was. And so when I started to do that, you know, people around me, even the kids at school, they're like, wow, we really see a difference, you know, in her. And I would tell my story to the kids so they understood my journey, and it helped them. Yep. It helped them because, well, what did you do there? You know, when you're under stress, how did you handle that? And I would explain and I would help them. And, you know, I'd have classes on it, mental health classes. And the people around me in the community, in my teaching community and in my family, my mom, you know, they just were really proud of me. And Mom says, I really like you better now than I did before. You know, and I said, well, of course you do.
Yeah, of course you do.
Because I'm healing, you know. Right. So yeah, big impact.
Stress kills, right? And more than just taking lives, it destroys a lot of things. There was a book I was reading, and they did a study out in Vancouver of hospital visits, and what they determined over a period of time, 80% of hospital visits were stress related. You know, that's stunning. If you don't take this seriously, well, I'm sure you've experienced some form of what we're talking about here. That's the importance of it. This is a really cool video, and I really like the way that this lady put a spin on it, because a lot of times when we're in pain, you know, we overemphasize, we get dramatic. As human beings, we do a very good job of getting dramatic. This is a really cool video that shows how to simply do a couple of things that absolutely can take the edge off and bring you really quickly from an overloaded position right back into that recharge. Again, really simple exercise.
I want you to think about the last time you had a really good laugh. Same sea of blank faces I see from coast to coast. We're gonna do a little research because, boy, NACU's all about research and education. And so what we're gonna do here is, on the count of 3, if you're physically able, I'll ask you to stand. If not, do this from a seated position. But on the count of 3, stand, and then facing me, I want you to just take a deep breath. And then I want you to put the shape of a smile on your face. For the purpose of this research, this does not have to be a real smile, okay? I will give you one last set of instructions, and then you can sit down and groan loudly, and we will give you the reasons for this research. All right, count of 3. 1, 2, 3, stand. Take a deep breath. Now put the shape of a smile on your face. And I need to see teeth. I don't care if they're yours, okay? Now, last set of instructions. Turn and make eye contact with a victim to your left or right. And now sit down groaning loudly. This is great. This is great. All right, 2 things here. 1, now everybody has a tool. If you had to leave right this minute, and please don't, but if you had to leave right now, you would have a tool. The next time you go back to work and you're sitting at your desk and you think, if one more person puts one more thing on my desk, I'm going to have to snatch them bald-headed. Now all you have to do is, facing your entryway, doorway, or hallway, sitting or standing, just do this. Because the next person to walk in and see you looking like this, they're going to know that now is not the time to bother you. You can play with your pain. You can be intentional. Doing little exercises. Here's another one that you may have known, you just forgot you knew it. Hold out your right thumb, forefinger about 1 inch apart. Close your left eye. Now find someone's head across the room. Bring your thumb and forefinger together and squish. They don't even know they were hit. Oh.
It's simple, right? And we did this course with a couple of the Western Hockey League teams when they were going into the bubble, because I knew it was going to be really stressful for them. And it was funny because the coaches called me not a week later saying, Wilkes, I got to tell you, it was the funniest thing. I'm going to give a kid feedback, and he turns and he's got this face that he's stressed out. And we both started laughing and automatically started to reduce, the stress that we were under. These are the types of things that happen when we normalize the fact that we all go there, but we can kind of hold each other accountable to being able to manage and strategize, what tool are you using? That's what makes the environment better. That's what's going to save us through this whole thing. Because Sean, if we don't have the ability to support each other in that way where we can make light of it, and this is just a normal part of life, there's nothing wrong with us, we're just having a minute, but we know what to do in that minute. That's what can save us.
Yeah, I think it is. It's that honesty and vulnerability. It's the acknowledgement that sometimes we can convince ourselves that we may be the only one that's going through some sort of pain or adversity, but it's amazing when you can open yourself up and you have a safe community of people, whoever that is, that's willing to also share, that you realize, like, I mean, I'm not an anti-social media person, but I just do see how fraudulent things like Facebook and stuff can be for people, because I've talked to so many people where they're convinced that their friends and family must have their life sorted out so well, because the only thing they ever see is these smiling pictures and oh, look, we're on vacation again, and oh, everything's good. And I think, I'm, as a therapist, I'm probably suspicious with people that put highly positive things on there. It's like, what are you hiding out there? But anyways, it's sort of more like, I think it is right now more than ever, with, access to information that's so explosive. I think it does have a key connection to the isolation, the loneliness, and the stress people have, because they're inundated with information from everybody, whether it's friends or family or the larger community, that would make a suggestion that everyone's happier and doing better than we are. And I didn't have to go through that as a teenager, right? Because I had to take a phone with a really long cord and stretch it all the way to my room if I wanted to have a private conversation. I didn't have snaps that were going off in my pocket, you know, at 2 a.m. like my kids do. And so I do think that, you know, we are at a time where, although information has become an innovative tool, it's also the thing that really starts to create a belief that everyone else has got life figured out so much more than we do. And I just believe in my heart of hearts that that's absolutely false. But at the same time, I believe it's a battle that many of us are in, with this kind of keeping up with the Joneses mentality that I think has only been exacerbated with A, the pandemic, and then B, the social media aspects to go along with that, you know.
It's all an illusion. Listen, everybody's struggling with something, right? It's just, it's what life is. That's what it presents to us, is an opportunity to become better, right? Something goes wrong. Okay, so you can learn from it. Now you don't have to deal with that anymore because you know what to do in that moment, right? Whether it's fixing equipment or whether it's fixing yourself. And that's how you really gain control. The definition of control is to exercise restraint. So we don't have to experience that stress. We don't have to feel that way. We can do stuff about it, or you can choose to sit in it. And Sherry, you know, sitting in it, not a good thing. The moment we start to realize that the only thing I fully have control over is myself, that's when the needle really starts to move.
Yeah, and I sat in my shit for a long time, you know. I sat in there for a long time, and what would happen is, you know, like we were saying, it would be projected onto everybody else around me, you know. I'd gossip, you know, I'd flock, right? All these things that create even more. And so what I do now really well, I think, is when something comes up, a situation, I take a breath and I try to see every single side of it before I will respond or before I will talk. And it just seems to give me a minute to step back and go, oh, okay, I'm going to stay regulated and I'm going to be able to handle it because I'm able to see all sides, right? And it's not just reactive. Yeah. So.
Big difference. So now, you know, we've talked about control. We've talked about, you know, the two sides, the healthy, the unhealthy. We've shown you the graph. We've shared, you know, a lot of what we've experienced, what we know is out there. And now it's about the strategies, you know, because the more strategies you have or tools, the better you're going to be. Strategy is just a plan, a method, or a series of maneuvers for obtaining a specific goal or result. So to manage my stress, what's my strategy to manage my stress? What maneuvers, what's my plan? What method do I have in place so that I can be able to do that? And again, the more strategies you have, the easier it's going to be to make sure that your stress doesn't get into overload and burnout for an extended period of time. Doesn't mean that you can't go there. And today was just one of those days. What you want to be able to reflect on at the end of the day is, I'm really glad that I had that conversation. I'm really glad that I did that breathing, because that's what brought me back to the good side. And that's the control that you have. And when you have that control, you know, life is different. It's being able to understand and communicate what I'm feeling and what I'm needing and what I'm wanting, right? Those are different things. They're all, you know, very closely tied together, but they are all different things. Managing and clarifying the expectations that you have of yourself and that you have of others. One of the things that we love to do when we start with a group to help them is set expectations and talk about expectations. And what I've learned is that every one of them that's gone through it, the hardest expectations to meet are their own. And if you can't meet your own expectations, that means that you're constantly putting yourself into that. So again, what's your strategy to be able to meet those expectations? Well, let's sit down and let's review them. Let's clarify them. Some of these we don't even need. I don't even know why that it is an expectation. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. Sean, you know, the 3 R's, again, simple. This is a strategy. 3 R's, is a really simple strategy to be able to use when you feel like you're crossing over.
Yeah, pretty darn helpful. I think when I think about like professional services over the last, 100+ years, back in the days of Freud and beyond, is everything was about getting access to that cortex and smart part of your brain, right? And really wanting to tap into this person's, the knowledge center, right? That's sort of up in the front. And what's been so profoundly explosive is to realize that we actually can't get there unless we're first regulated, meaning we're actively doing strategies that regulate our heart rate, that keep our blood pressure in check, where we feel actually physically and emotionally safe, right? Where we're comfortable. And then to do that in a relationship, right? And so in a relationship where there's trust, where there's respect, I don't have to believe that what I say to this person is going to get turned into some sort of flocking gossip at the coffee shop, similar to what Sherry was, right? Because then I'm dysregulated and I don't feel emotionally safe. And then what we now know is it's actually then impossible for us to have access to that smart part of our brain, where if we are involved in some learning, the ability that we can maybe store it and use it again in the future is only going to be achieved if we're first regulated when doing so, and be relationally safe. Then we can tap into that smart part of our brain. And that's been some pretty profound information that we've known about for, the last 10 to 15 years that I really do believe is going to have a transformative impact on the human species moving forward. My hope is 100 years from now, the way we do classrooms and the way we do family relationships and the way we do work-life balance is going to be informed by such a better and profound knowledge of the way our brain works, that maybe we won't have to suffer as much as we've had up until this point. That's the rose-colored glasses I'm going to choose to wear, because I do believe in our human species to innovate, pivot, and improve.
Right? We evolve in so many different ways, but we still, as human beings, learn to tolerate a lot of pain. I was with a group recently, and it kind of hit me. The last year of my career, I got kicked in the face with a skate, broke my jaw, cut me open for 30 stitches, got through that. About a month later, had a really bad separation in my shoulder. I went and saw the doctor. He's like, you don't feel any of that? And I'm like, no, should I? He's like, you should be screaming in pain right now. He says, you might want to think about changing your profession. And what it really dawned on me was the physical pain you learn how to deal with. It was the emotional pain that I had really built up this unbelievable tolerance to live in that space. So when we talk about overload and burnout, I had conditioned myself to live in that environment so well that I can endure what in the medical profession should absolutely not occur. That type of pain and that kind of ability to do that. It's sad what it does to us. Stephanie, I hope that helps. You wanted the 3 R's back up there. Some strategies to regulate. I think it's really important. Most important thing for me is having the awareness of where I'm at, what I'm starting to feel physically. Not necessarily the thoughts, but just taking that moment, like Sean said, to do that body scan. It's like, okay, I feel pretty good. But there's probably a couple of things I could do. These new smart watches, they are pretty smart. I got one yesterday, and I do 3 minutes, and it's my stress test, and it shows me, right? It takes my heart rate at that time, and it tells me what my level is and if I'm in an appropriate level or not. There's lots of ways that we can really be able to do a quick scan to figure out how we are. Breathing exercises. We gave you one today. There's a ton of them on YouTube. Type in breathing exercises. People think, well, I know how to breathe. No, there's better ways to learn how to breathe. Getting out, going for a walk, talking it out, journaling. The most important step, Sherry, is to make sure that we're taking some form of action to gain that control that we want in our life.
Yeah. Awareness first, and then you have to take action.
Yep.
And that's the thing, when I had clients for learning disabilities, when I worked for Saskatchewan here, it was always, okay, well, yeah, I'm aware. Okay, but what are you doing about it? Right? And it's like nothing. So the next week we make, try to get these things going. And next week it's the same thing. I wish I could feel better. I wish, right? What are you going to do about it? Like for me, literally, I had sticky notes on my cupboards. I had sticky notes on my walls. I had sayings that would trigger my brain to start thinking properly rather than, catastrophizing again or whatever, right? And stinking thinking. So, I mean, every minute of every day I was working on it until I developed those pathways that work now. So yeah, you got to do something about it. That's the key, and you can keep saying, I know all this stuff. Yeah, you do. But what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. You don't understand it, because if you understood it, you'd be able to do it.
Yeah. Stop wishing.
Yeah.
I wish, no, do.
I've got one more slide. We're going to get ready to wrap up. On a scale of 1 to 5, how helpful was this conversation for you? We love the feedback. We're thrilled to be working with the Do More Ag group and what they're trying to do for the community. If anybody has any questions at this time, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Sean, as we get ready to wrap up, any final thoughts for the audience?
Just I think excited for maybe a trip to Regina in June. I think we're gonna be out there for an event, and that's always exciting. We haven't been able to get on the road as much during the pandemic, and so it's just so nice to get out and be in relationship with people. So I'm looking forward to that. Loved what Sherry was just talking about there. I think that idea of the more intentional and purposeful we are with our activities or our interventions, the more likely we are to have some success with that. If we even carve out 5 minutes, you know what I mean? To your point about your watch there, I had a client that came to see me before this session, and she's dealing with a pretty toxic workplace environment, and she's just about to probably head off on some stress leave. And she gave me some feedback at the end of the session. She's like, you're a good therapist, Sean. And I'm like, why is that? She's like, because my heart rate on my iPhone was 140 when I came here after leaving my office, and now it's down to 70. So I was like, I'm going to take a 50 heartbeat swing as a positive sign of feedback. The only strategy I might add is having a meal, with your family, and hiding your phone in a drawer somewhere during that sacred time, and then evaluating how present and purposeful the discussion was without the distraction of technology is I think another thing that seems to be, we're losing the sacred activity of coming together for meals. It seems more and more, because people are busy and they're working and they're running the roads, but even a couple times a week, if you can come together for that meal that isn't interrupted by technology, I think that can have a profound impact on people's stress and wellness as well.
Yeah. Leadership and culture and wellness and happiness, they're all possible, but they take a great deal of work. They take a very strong skill set, and most importantly, they take a huge commitment to being able to be those things. And if you're someone that struggles with it, I hope that this conversation has helped enough for you to start taking action, because I promise you, when you do, and you can manage your stress, the relationships you have in your life are going to get a little better, like Sherry talked about, right? It does have an influence. They are going to notice that you're not arguing anymore. They're going to notice that you're not snapping at people anymore. And that's going to get them moving in a direction as well. They may never ask you for any strategies. They may never see any help, but it will start to alter their behavior. People we have found are very influential. Why do you think these marketing companies are so brilliant at where they place stuff in the grocery stores and how they advertise on TV? Because they know that we're predictable. And when we start to change that a little bit and we start to take responsibility for our own well-being, it's amazing how we can start to help others. So you are the most important person in your life. And until you start to really take control and do some of the things that we talked about, it can continue to be difficult, and it doesn't need to be. So I hope that you'll start to take some action. Get people to watch this. I know the team at Do More Ag is going to have the recording available. Email them and ask them for it. Come and see us on June 22nd at the Ag Show. Have a conversation. If you need help in between now and then, reach out to us. That's what we're here to do. We'd love to be able to help you gain the understanding that you need to be able to do what we've learned and what we've helped thousands of other people do. If we can do that, the world's a little bit better place. And if we're all doing that, we can have a significant impact too. So Michaela, thank you so much for allowing us to be here tonight. Sherry, Sean, you guys are awesome as always. And for everybody else, if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out.